Hey everyone, I'm Val Cameron, and thank you so much for joining me in this presentation called Animated Ideas Pixar Interpretations of Mental Health and How They Help. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm dealing with mental health, I reach out to entertainment and something fun. And Pixar has made it so easy to deal with mental health issues. And I've selected 3 movies today that's going to help us and help others get through some of the main mental health issues that we deal with. It's going to be all about the feels, you guys. The 3 movies I have chosen are Inside Out, Finding Nemo, and Up. I'm sure if you're familiar with Pixar movies, you understand that they know all about how to get us to our feelings and quick. We usually need tissues because we're going to be laughing, crying, and most of the time, adults feel these feelings more than kids when they're watching the movies, which is great because sometimes we don't understand how to deal with our feelings, but also there are a lot of movies that we can sit down with our kids, watch them, and help them through a situation that maybe neither of us understand. The first one that I'm going to talk about is near and dear to my heart, and it's called Inside Out. This was a very groundbreaking animated movie, and we're going to talk about depression. Now, depression is a really confusing thing to go through, especially when you're a kid and you're not sure about any of the feelings that are going on in your head. So Inside Out brought all the feelings towards us, and we jumped inside of Riley's head. This is this cute little girl up here, and we see all of her feelings: fear, anxiety, anger, joy, sadness. Like, we see all of it. And she deals with a lot of change, which depression and change, at least in my life, they kind of go hand in hand. And when you're a kid in school and you have a lot of change and you start feeling these different feelings that are sad and anger and anxiety, it's kind of hard to feel joy. And the character Joy in the movie feels like all she can do to help Riley is to get rid of all of those very sad feelings. Well, sometimes we feel like if we don't acknowledge the sad feelings that we have, that we're automatically going to be happy, and that's just not the case. I don't know if you were told when you were younger to, make sure nobody sees you cry, make sure that you're happy and smiling all the time, but that doesn't always work, especially when you're going through depression. Her parents are also dealing with a lot of those feelings, and they're not quite sure what she's going through. So they're all kind of going through ups and downs together. But what happens with Joy is she's constantly arguing with sadness. There's this thing that goes on in Riley's head that sadness and joy back and forth just can't seem to get along together. And boy, isn't that reality, right, you guys? Like, constantly we're trying to deal with our sadness. If we're happy, what's going on? And I feel like this movie was so true. And I sat and watched this movie in the theater with my daughter, who was just turning 13 at the time. So, okay, here comes adolescence and puberty. We watched the movie. At the end of the movie, we had such great conversations about all the different changes that were going on in her life, changing schools. We were changing homes at a time, and then puberty is coming with boys. And you know what happens with depression, if you've been dealing with it for a long time, is that as soon as your hormones kick in, that depression kind of ups itself by 100%. And so dealing with her and this movie, it helped a lot of us, me and my family, be able to talk about our feelings together and say that it's okay to acknowledge all these feelings that you have in a healthy way. And here are some cool ideas on how to do it in the movie. Plus, these characters are just fun, guys. Like, it's seriously a really fun movie to watch. And if you don't cry when you meet Bing Bong, I don't even know. Like, it's so great. The next movie that I'm going to choose actually came out when my daughter was a toddler. And if you've had any young kids, if you're a parent or a grandparent, or you have nieces and nephews, you understand that when you watch them, you're going to watch a movie that they love over and over and over. And that was exactly Finding Nemo. And I did not know when I started watching Finding Nemo with my toddler daughter how much this movie was going to help her when she grew up, because my daughter actually suffers from severe anxiety, which started in elementary school, and we're still dealing with it today, and she's 19 years old. So this movie, dealing with anxiety and with trauma, it covers a lot of topics. Now, Marlin is Nemo's dad, and he sees a very traumatic thing happen to him where his wife and all but one egg, so basically his kids, die in front of him. And I mean, that's very traumatic. Most of us deal with a lot of traumatic things, and sometimes during elementary, high school, and even our adult lives. And so we kind of have to realize that those are going to make some impacts on us. This also deals with control. Usually when you have depression or anxiety like me, I also have some control issues. And when you go through something traumatic, often you want to control everything around you. And Marlin becomes a super overbearing parent. My mom was definitely one of those. She was always worried about us, which made me worry. And that trickles down to, everyone in your life. And so so many real life things happen to these fish that I can totally relate to. And the anxiety that comes along with the trauma and the control can actually lead to you missing out on things in your life. But once Nemo actually gets captured by a scuba diver, both Marlin and Nemo have to overcome a lot of things in their life that they never thought they would have to before. They both have to ask for help, which was very hard for them. They both have to realize that they're strong enough to overcome a lot of the really bad obstacles in their lives. And they make friends that they probably would have never made because of the trauma and the anxiety that they had before, which is so cool. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see that big shark right there. I don't know that I'd want to be friends with the big shark, but we realize that these characters in this movie, once we get to know them, they all have problems and anxiety just like we do, which is kind of in real life. So Nemo is definitely a great one to sit down, watch with you and the kids, and kind of talk through these lessons. Pixar seriously knows how to pick their characters, and they did it very well in Finding Nemo. Now, Up, oh my gosh, Up. If you have not seen Up, you don't know that you're going to go through, a whole box of tissues probably the first 10 minutes of this movie. The first 10 minutes of this movie, you see Carl, who is the man here in the glasses, meet this young girl who becomes his wife, and they just create this amazing bond together. They grow up together, they get married, and they have this life together that they plan on going on this amazing trip to a destination place. Well, when they're a little bit older, Carl's wife passes away. Now, I saw this movie, and a few years later, my mom passed away. And I know that my mom was the love of my dad's life. And for him to deal with that grief on losing the person that has been your life for so long is super hard. And then to deal with that just as a kid is super hard. And this movie shows that change can be really hard. And Carl holds on to things in the past that he didn't get to do with his wife. But throughout the movie, we realize that he had such a fulfilled life with her, but he's just not seeing it. And if you've ever gone through grief or loss before, sometimes you realize you can kind of be a jerk. And Carl was kind of a grumpy old man that didn't want anybody on his lawn or his front porch. And then comes Russell. Russell is this cute little boy that just needs some help from Carl. He's trying to get his badges. And so he shows up on Carl's door one day and telling him he just needs to walk him across the street so that he can get a badge. Well, of course, Carl wants nothing to do with this kid because he's super nice, he's different, and he just doesn't want to deal with anything outside of his home that doesn't remind him of his wife. And by the way, on the outside of his home, everything is coming down around him. He is the only house that's still in this area that's now being demolished to build big sky rises. So what do you do when you're dealing with loss and grief? You try and hold on to every single thing that reminds you of that person. And for him, it is this home that he built with his wife. So he puts balloons up the chimney, and he is bound and determined to take this home, which reminds him of his wife and symbolizes his wife, to the destination that they wanted to travel to together. Now, this is totally ridiculous, you guys, but it very much reminds us of the things that we want to hold on to in our lives that remind us of those people that we've either lost from death or maybe lost from a breakup, or they moved away. Like, there's a lot of different loss and grief that we have to deal with in our lives. And this movie deals with that because Russell is also going through some loss and grief because the dad that he wants to be around in his life just isn't there. And he's looking for it and trying to become something that he thinks his dad will stick around for. Him and Carl become really good friends. And of course, it's a ridiculous journey where this house goes to this very far off place where they meet birds, dogs that talk, they have adventures. And they both realize that they have a very full life. They've met each other as friends. And just because their life didn't turn out the way they planned it to be, doesn't mean that it's still not going to be great. And they both allowed people in. Now, of course, Russell, being a kid, he's going to believe and allow more people in than Carl, who is kind of stuck in his ways. But together they become this misfit team that just makes you happy and cry at the same time. If you have not seen this movie, Up, I do think it's more for adults than for kids, but I think across the board, it can help anybody deal with loss and grief.